Why do people play games? Is it to have fun? Or is it to be the best at something? For most people, one of the two is the answer. And if that's so, then why do people play games that infuriate them so much? Why would they continue to do something that would make them so mad? Probably because they're a masochist. But some people like me do it because of the experience and the challenge that comes with it's a thing that most people will quit on. I just wish that there was a way that I could find games like this. It just so happens that there's a genre for everything. Maybe I'll find something that suits this amazing feeling of accomplishment. So what is this amazingly sadistic genre? Well, it doesn't really have a name. Yes, this genre has no name, because there isn't a lot of games of this type, since it's not for everyone. And I know, the best genre, not for everyone? How does that make sense? Well, it doesn't, but it does. The reason why it does is because of the feeling of accomplishment, peace, and anger, all of them at once. With that feeling just getting better every time you revisit the same bit again and again, but doing it faster and faster. It just, I don't get why. Maybe playing a game a lot makes you have a superpower like thing that makes you feel joy doing the same thing over and over again. Or maybe I'm just insane. So with all of that being said, I ask you another question. How can we tell what games are a part of this fake genre? Well, that's the question I'm here to answer today. So why don't we do a bit of research by looking at the games which I believe are a part of this genre. Thus, to make sense of what these games are, I need to see what are the connecting factors at play. Here's the whiteboard, here are the lines. All we need now are the connections. And at the end of the video, we can name this thing with the perfect name. Oh, and by the way, I just wanted to say, if you look up any of these games on Steam, the only things that link them are the difficulty tag and psychological horror. Regardless of that, why don't we start with Pogosuck, a perfect beginning to this case, since Rage has all the building blocks on which to make one of these games. So I ask you, how does one make a game? Well, I think all you need are the three fundamentals that every game has to abide by. Firstly, the goal has to always be to reach the top of something, preferably a big rock. Secondly, the map on which you play on has to look like it was made in the mind of a drug-fueled druggie. And finally, how you get to the top must be really inconvenient, just for your convenience. For example, with Will, it's a normal pogo stick. Of course, if you ignore the magical flying powers, you pogo, you flip, and then sparks start coming out of your tip. And then, space travel has been achieved. P.S. If you fall from a long height and do the rocket thing, then you can get closer and maybe even further than where you were before. Okay, now that we got all of that sorted out, back to the whiteboard. I will write all of these down, but I want to focus on one key part, the inconvenient part, by showing you how the game finds ways to make you a better player without even doing anything. To show you this, I'll show you the first crux that I encountered while playing, that being the tree. Now, it might just look like an ordinary tree to an outsider's view, but don't worry, as this is only a ploy to make you believe that this will be a cakewalk, just like the few obstacles that came before. But however, to an outside-the-box thinker like me, you'll clearly see that this is the embodiment of hell. However, the tree wasn't the part that was particularly a problem to me, it was the part that came before it. As you can see, you can easily just jump too far to the left and proceed to fall down and take a tumble. So my strategy of holding the jump button to get the most air led me astray. After a good 15 minutes of brain rot, two neurons connected together that began to think of a way out of this conundrum, and then it hit me. The reason why I was holding the jump button was because the Pokemon didn't stop jumping no matter what I did. So what if I used that to my advantage? So I let him hop to where I needed him to be, and then I did the holding thing, and it worked! Because of the minimum hand holding, I had to find my own way of fixing the problem that someone else may have not had done before. And that leads me to falling into a repetitive nature of, okay, that doesn't work, okay, that does, now how do I do it faster? That's the thing that my mind is learning to do without me noticing. Meaning everywhere where slamming your head against the wall doesn't work, I have to start using my brain to think of an idea of how to pass this part. That's what I want to put on the wall. Brain must be used, and if so, brain make happy. Anyways, why don't we talk about Jumping is probably the second game that you would think of out of the bunch, and I believe it's the hardest one to beat, with almost everyone who has played it not ending up finishing it. Because of that, it must be extremely complicated with overly bad controls and stupid mechanics for each map that barely work sometimes. Well, actually, it's as simple as it gets. There are only 3 buttons and 3 maps to beat. So what's the deal? Why is it so hard? Well, the controls are easy to use. Being able to use them correctly is where the challenge comes to play. Jumping needs to be precise. Know how long you have to hold down the jump button so that you can land in the right spot, or become like Icarus and jump too far from the platform or something. I don't know. I haven't read the show. The maps are made up of screens that you switch from by getting to the top of them or the bottom, and the only way to see the next screen is by jumping, which leads to the conundrum of not knowing where the next platform is. This enforces the notion of learning from your mistakes, making finding a solution to that problem fun in its own way. And what's better than finding a solution is using it afterwards seamlessly, like building up muscle memory that makes mastery of everything easier. This is one of the keystones of what makes a fun experience that's not just a pushover, as every move needs to be calculated, like a simple all-white puzzle. Okay, but how do you explain the puzzle growing limbs and jumping out the window? Okay, well, these are the basics. What made me want to talk about Jumping are the environment problem. The 3 maps in Jumping have their own issues, but the biggest problem you'll be facing is snow and heavy snow. Snow is in 2 of the 3 maps, so it's a necessity to know how it works. For the snow, it moves you wherever it blows.
Okay.
Meaning if you jump wherever it doesn't blow, you can. But it's not all downside, as the snow gives you some momentum, so if you jump the same direction as the wind, it will send you flying to the other side of the screen. However, on the other pill is heavy snow, acting like the total opposite of ordinary snow, as it limits you to only jumping, removing walking entirely, meaning more precise jumps that if not done correctly means out. These 2 types of snow change how you play the game without ignoring the core mechanics. All of this comes back to the puzzle solving metaphor, where you jump out, catch it, beat it, and then mpreg. Editing I see here. Just wanted to say, I don't think a lot of people know what mpreg is. It means map progression. Just look it up. In a way, the maps master being unfair in a fair way. But of course, it's done so well in a 2D environment, this couldn't be replicated in 3D. Now can it, right? So how do you explain this? That's right, the second dimension is not our limit. So here we can explore the X, Y, and Z axis. Yet the goal is still the same. It's just to go up, but with an additional twist. You yourself are a harpoon and you can parry balls to get some airtime. The dive ability allows you to charge yourself and fling yourself to platforms, enemies, and again, balls. And if you use the dive abilities, then parry an enemy or a ball, you can gain another dive again. So that means that you can use it mid-air. Then you can just hit some cool Devil May Cry combos. Even with these twists, the fundamentals are still the same, but I still think that Eraser, even though it's in the 3rd dimension, doesn't use what it adds in a remarkable way, because unlike the other 2 games, Eraser lacks a real challenge. Even though it should be harder than the other ones, which it isn't, meaning Eraser is still a fun but worse experience. I still think that there is something here. Maybe if the game was a bit longer and had a few more parts, like a skill check to see if you're not actually brain dead. Remember the DMC reference? Of course you don't. Well, I wasn't joking. The last 50% of the game is just a full combo of non-stop parries, non-stop dives into balls, which is really cool and feels like what should have been the game. The only downside to that problem is that it makes the game feel really short, because it's just constant movement, meaning the only thing that I wanted from this game actually made it worse in some way. But the game also added something new, which I also hated while playing the game so much. It's the addition of paper airplanes that dive into you and knock you back. You get up, get hit, get up, get hit, get up, get hit, get up, get hit, and fall. However, as much as I liked them, the paper airplanes just felt like more of a nuisance than a challenge. Sadly, they weren't really used that much, but they're still one of the aspects of the game that made me come back. As unfair as they can be, but still, everything is done in just the right way that at the end, it still gives me that kick of the feeling, in spite of only being a small kick. So what do? You play the hard mode. But I wouldn't really call it a hard mode, as the only thing that changed is how long you take to get up from getting hit, as it does the spike damage instead of the normal damage. There's nothing really here to talk about, just wanted to mention it so that no one else could. But I think we all learned a lesson here. Not all good things come in the second dimension, which is just exactly what we need for the board. I'll just put it here. Peak of Yolk, or as I would call it, POY for short, is the weirdest one out of the bunch, because it's so close to being a part of this genre, but just different enough where I wouldn't really call it a part of it. While yes, POY can be hard and has some similarities that fit with a lot of the things that I've said before, like climbing, a big factor to POY being different is that it helps you. While Pogo and Jumping and Eraser can sometimes help you in some way, it's not really direct, whilst POY gives you stuff like rope. And this is where the quote-unquote problem is. Even if you play badly, which I do, falling isn't really as catastrophic as it should be. Even if you fall all the way down to the ground, there will still be the rope that you place, making progress of getting back up to where you were an easier one. And if that's so, why would the game do that? But what I think the game is trying to do isn't be a part of these games. It's trying to imitate a real mountain climbing experience. And I don't think that's the easiest thing to do. Plus, this is the most realistic game I've talked about, because you can climb mountains in real life. Yes, it's dangerous, but you can do it. I don't think you can climb a damn paper tower. What's realistic is climbing a mountain and holding a rock and then flying. Anyways, how about we actually talk about the game? The year is 1887. You are an unknown climber who just moved to the small house in the middle of a load of mountains. The reason why you moved here? Conquering every mountain, from small to big. You have a book with a list of climbs that need to be stamped, with the stamp being at the top of every mountain. And you will climb only by using the tools you have: rope, coffee, and your hands. Do enough of these, the official Ascension Society gives you harder and harder challenges, until the penultimate multi-hour journey, which uses a new ice pick mechanic, which is only used for 2 mountains. I know, it's not easy, but nobody cares about that. How about we talk about bouldering? This is exactly what I was looking for. No equipment, just your hands. Well, coffee is usable. Actually, speaking of equipment, why don't we talk about them? Firstly, the rope holds you and you can't fall unless you unattach from it. Secondly, the chalk grants you better grip on rocks, specifically the ones that involve stamina, and the coffee just makes you jump higher. All of this ends up becoming a magnanimous climbing simulator. The only way you can get help is from the basic control. Also, not having a story mode would help. Getting Over It is like the first few albums of a musician. Perfect in every way, and then going downhill from there. It's pure, it's calming, and it's the start of all the good and the bad. And it's simpler than all of them. The only action being done is moving the hammer, along with having the weirdest way of transporting anybody from place to place, 360 degrees of broken arms, and funny enough, a way to Pogo. This is a freeing experience. Well, maybe not in game, but most certainly in real life. Just perfect. Now, I'm not really going to talk about Getting Over It because I already have a whole video on it. I just want to mention the best part of it, and it's the ending. Because the ending is nothing. No, really. You just go to space and hammer asteroids, and then nothing. Just a screen that says, you won. But do you really need anything more? Isn't that satisfying enough? A win's a win. Like Gandhi once said, it's not about beating the game, it's about the journey or something. I don't know. Gandhi. Yeah, Gandhi. You're right. Being stuck at an orange is a good thing. And that's what I think carries the experience. The journey, or more like the replayability. With Getting Over It being so bare bones as it is, getting better is the main thing to do after you beat the game. And I guess I have to mention it because you most likely were thinking about it if you ever heard of a Dark Souls. With the notion of Dark Souls being get good, putting a big emphasis on how tough these games are, but I don't think the notion of get good is what all of these games try to make you do. I mean, all of them are really easy and short if you get good at them. A game like Dark Souls can be mastered. However, unlike the games I talked about before, there's one difference between a Dark Souls game and a getting over it, and that's RNG. If you get into a sticky situation in a Souls-like, being able to adapt to the unfairness will be hard. But in a getting over it, the only way to really get stuck is with your own flaws, as the only enemy you'll be facing is yourself. Oh no, the feeling is getting too big. Perfection has been achieved. Well, ain't that a shocker? The feeling was never a monster, but the key. I now know, with this information, the name of this genre is Climax. Climax embodies all aspects of climbing and ass. The climbing being a process of freeing the soul and getting the feeling. And the stupid hard control that barely work because they wouldn't. From now on until the end of time, you will be calling this genre the Climax. And with this name, I can finally end the video.